let's go to Jim Crow, Alabama in May 1963, to Birmingham, then the most racially segregated city in the U.S., under the brutal public safety commissioner Bull Connor, to the civil rights movement and the Children's March. Joining me to talk about that seminal moment in American history is Shane Lloyd, Assistant Director of the Afro-American Cultural Center at Yale University. Shane, thanks so much for being here. Tell me,
Sheila,
what was the Children's March?
So the Children's March was probably one of the most seminal pieces and components of the civil rights movement, where you had children who were as young as 8 years old marching 10 miles to sort of fight for injustice. And it did a few things. One, it demonstrated that people as young as 8 years old had a deep sense of justice and fairness, and also felt empowered and committed to take action. And had that crusade not been as successful, it would not have sort of set up Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King for as successful a campaign in his civil rights movement.
Take us to the atmosphere in Birmingham at that time. What were these kids, as you say, some as young as 8? What were they facing?
They were facing hoses, dogs, police officers with batons beating them, yelling at them. And it demonstrated the viciousness of this sort of racialized system that sought to suppress and subdue and subjugate black people. Because if anybody could be as vicious and virulent to young children, then it goes to show you that the whole system is inhumane.
Why children? Why use children in such an environment as that?
In such an environment, that was important because for some people would assume that the children were too young to even understand the spirit of injustice. But these were conversations that were happening in the homes. These were things that they had seen on TV. They were deeply inspired by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And they also wanted to play a role in sort of securing their rights, in pursuing integration, and having access to better opportunities. And some of the parents, although they forewarned some of their children not to participate and were more guarded, other parents said, you know what, if they're going to be full participants and full citizens, then why would we stop them from this early opportunity to demonstrate their rights and exercise their voices in leadership? One
of the participants recalled Dr. King saying, I think it's a mighty fine thing for children what you're doing, because when you march, you're really standing up, because a man can't ride your back unless it's bent. Why was
unaware should be shielded really speaks to the power of the fight that they were up against, and how it required all parties, even the youngest members of our community to the oldest members of our community, to sort of really take a strong stand and be coordinated and resilient.
And so when you look at what is happening now, clearly we are a weekend from the events at Parkland, but when you look at what is happening now, when you listen to those young people think, what goes through your mind?
What goes through my mind is that it seems apropos, because if we think of the Children's Crusade, it reminds us that Black history is American history, and the legacy that the Parkland students are stepping into is a powerful one that has been sort of set for them long before they entered into the sort of spotlight. And their ability to sort of take the emotional strife and pain and the rawness and to transform that into very committed and concerted action, to organize their peers, to speak on public, to go on different news channels and sort of share their stories, to counter some of the voices that would silence them or besmirch their good name, or to characterize them as actors or dupes. That is a very, very bold stand, and demonstrates almost the best of what is American progress.
And we've heard that from some voices. Some voices have criticized these young people and have said they're in an emotional state, they don't know what they're talking about, they're too young to understand all the ramifications. But what you're saying is that this is part of the way it plays out, that there are forces who will say, you don't know what you're doing.
Exactly. If we look at Emma Gonzalez, for example, she knew that she could have predicted that people were going to counter her arguments, and she said, I'm a high school student, I have studied this, I will continue to study this, and I'm going to raise awareness. So she was quite informed about these circumstances, and quite informed of, you know, the steps that she needed to take, or the voices that she needed to raise, to ensure that she had an audience that would be sort of front and center to the issue and wouldn't sort of deflect to the spin.
So what was accomplished by the Children's March?
What was accomplished by the Children's March was, one, a bold display of activism and a demonstration that even the youngest parties can participate as full citizens. Also, that it's really important to consider intergenerational movements, and that no one party or age group can actively pursue justice without the assistance of others. Additionally, it sort of set up for a series of wins for the overall civil rights movement, and then also permeated college campuses, because anyone who could be, college campuses were also very live and active during that period of time, and they were more motivated because of the participation of youngest members who hadn't even sort of moved to this kind of space. Mm-hmm.
And what was the impact? Did it change in any way public opinion about the civil rights movement?
I think the civil rights movement gained a greater deal of favor, because any system that would attack children is not a just system. It is not representative of American ideals and American values, and should probably be undone.
And so those pictures were extremely powerful. Mm-hmm. They had a formative effect on public opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Shane Lloyd, thanks so much for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.